Hello and welcome to Milsurp World, the podcast all about military surplus. This is your host Aaron, the 8mm hipster. I'm joined today by Danny. Say hello, Danny.
Oh,
Now, this is our first podcast ever, so we're going to be talking about ourselves a little bit and what we collect, and then we'll go into our main topic, which is the current Milsurp market and tips for new collectors. Danny, do you want to intro yourself? Do you want me to go first?
yeah, I'll go ahead and go. So I am Danny, but I'm a North Florida gun guy on YouTube. That's because I am from North Florida, even though I don't live there now. It's just where I'm from. I love guns.
When did you start collecting?
I was like, I think I was 16 or 17. I started collecting like guns. I bought my first gun. I think I can't remember 16 or 17, but I was working at GameStop. I remember it, and I knew like nothing about guns pretty much, and I was in a pawn shop in Gainesville, Florida, like AR-15 there, and I just had to have it. It was $400, which was exactly how much money I had like in savings, like my life savings up to that point. So I bought that AR-15, and I thought it was amazing, of course, and took to the range a lot. It had all sorts of malfunctions and stuff, and it taught me a lot of like how to like maintain a gun and how to clear malfunctions and stuff like that, because it was an Olympic Arms like band model AR-15. It was complete garbage. But after that, I got my first Milsurp. It was actually two. My first Milsurp was I traded a couple AK-74s that I had, the Mauser K98K Russian Capture and an M1 Garand. And I don't have that exact K98K anymore, but man, I realized after those two guns that I much preferred military surplus, and a lot more into military surplus than any other kind of tactical guns. So,
Same here. Do you
what was your
have
first?
Well, my first gun was actually a kind of odd choice, but I was at an auction across town, and they had a couple of 22 rifles and a couple of hunting shotguns, and one of the ones that was listed, well, actually it wasn't listed, but it was just on the pile with the rest of them, was actually an 1895 Chilean Mauser, and
Hmm.
nobody bid on it. So I'm just bidding against I think one other person, and the bidding stopped at $190. And I've never owned a firearm before. I didn't really have much of an interest in firearms other than like video games. So I'm just standing there going, I just bought a gun. I don't have any idea what I even bought. So actually still have this gun. It's one of my favorite guns to shoot, 7mm Mauser, and I just have been falling in love with it ever since. I had a disposable income. I was single. I had a full-time job, so I just started buying stuff. By the first year, I owned 5 guns, and it was just crazy. I just kept buying and buying and buying.
And yep, the good old single days.
Exactly.
No, actually, I've been buying more guns since I've been in a relationship. I think the dual income
No,
um,
I understand that.
helps.
Yeah.
But 1895, that's a really good first Mauser, because I mean, to me, I think the 1895. I know everyone kind of says like the 98, the 1898 Mauser is kind of like the pinnacle. I would almost say that the 1895, in a lot of ways, sort of is like it's an alternate sort of pinnacle of the Mauser design.
Well,
Um,
it's really, I would almost argue, the pinnacle of maybe the small ring design.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, is the large ring really necessary? Like a request from the German government, and then everyone just kind of followed suit because the Germans were doing it. Um, it's added weight and everything. There's a lot to be said for small ring Mausers, and I mean, a lot of other German and other Mausers are small rings, like the K98AZ, the G33 40. Those are small ring Mausers.
One that people don't realize a lot as well, because it's a much rarer rifle, but I actually do own one. a 1909 Peruvian is actually a small ring Mauser. Even
Oh
though,
yeah, that's what it looks like a Gewehr 98, right?
yes, it looks just like a Gewehr 98, it's actually basically a copy, straight up copy of a Gewehr 98. But the Peruvian government requested that their barrels swap with their 1891s, therefore it had to be small ring. So it looks just like a G98, but it's not.
I guess it makes sense, like if they were using small ring Mausers at the time. But one of my latest Mauser purchases is a Chilean 1895 short rifle. Ever since I got into like Swedish guns, I kind of realized that the 1895 design has some things over the sort of 1894 Mauser. It's a good solid gun, man. Like that 7 millimeter is a great cartridge.
Yeah, very flat shooting.
Yeah, and that little, it's not really necessary, but I think it's really cool that they added that little safety lug, like on the 1895, the third lug, sort of in the back.
Yeah, it's not really necessary, like you said. The 7 millimeter is not a really super powerful round. It's not a Magnum cartridge. It's not gonna blow anybody away with that. But so I don't really see how it's necessary. But I guess it's just an added safety feature in case something went wrong.
Yeah, which is like it's good if you are like a reloader, or you plan on shooting maybe some like hot military surplus ammo.
Danny, do you have a focus in your collection?
Sort of like I, I'm a big fan of Swedish and German Mausers. Buying Swedes a lot more. I have the exact same amount of German guns and Swedish guns now. Are
Wow.
my big two hobbies. And then like I kind of have just a lot of like miscellaneous guns. Like I was writing it out the other day because I'm building like a gun wall. I'm gonna have all my guns on the wall, and I was trying to figure out like how I'm gonna like sort of put them together. I realized it's either German, Swedish, or kind of miscellaneous. I don't really, I'm not like a lot of collectors like American, surplus like 1903s and stuff, but I'm not really big into American surplus.
Same here,
Yeah,
except mine is more of a issue of cost. The cost of an American surplus rifle, like a 1903 or an M1, is usually 2 to 3 times more than what I've ever paid for a rifle. So I can't justify it buying one gun versus buying three.
yeah, that's true, man. There's a lot of guns that sort of fit in that sort of realm. Like it's a really rare gun, and it's hard to purchase a gun when you know you could get three other guns.
Yeah, so my focus of my collection, why Danny has dubbed me the 8 millimeter hipster, is been mostly 8 millimeter rifles of some different caliber. I'm up to 5 right now, all different calibers, all different rifles. So except for the two Siamese, but they're two different calibers, so I technically think they're different. So that's what I'm kind of focusing on myself, and it's been fun trying to find all the different 8 millimeter calibers because there's quite a few.
Yeah. You were how many? There's a lot more than I realized that they were 8 millimeter. Like I think when
Well,
most people just say like, "Oh yeah, my gun shoots 8 millimeter," I think most people just like think 8 millimeter Mauser.
no, yeah. So I believe there are, if you count 8 millimeter Mauser, I believe there's 10.
Oh yeah,
So most of them are rimmed cartridges, and obviously an older style. A lot of them are very obscure. It's just a fun thing to collect. It's something different, and I like to be different, so therefore I've been dubbed a hipster.
you know what? I think I'm kind of doing the same thing now that I think about it with 6.5. I think I'm trying to collect all the different like military 6.5s out there.
You're gonna need some Italian Carcanos then.
Yeah, I have one. I have the long rifle, the 1891 long rifle.
The M91, yeah. One of
Yeah,
the three M91.
yeah. I have three 1891s. I was somebody at the gun show yesterday about that. I said, "Oh, I need an 1891 bayonet," and they were like, "Oh, here." And they handed me an Argentine bayonet. Like they just assumed I was talking about that. I was talking about the Carcano bayonet.
Right. For those of you that don't know, there are three Model 1891s, all totally different rifles. Talking about the Model 1891 Mosin Nagant, the Model 1891 Argentine Mauser, and the Model 1891 Italian Carcano. They all came out in the same year, and they all have the same model designation, so it gets very confusing.
Yeah, that was another big year, man. there's a lot of those like years, like in the 1880s and 1890s, like 2 years, just so much happened. So many like arms were like invented or
Well, it's a huge amount of arms race going on. I mean, the
uh,
release of the Lebel and the smokeless cartridge in 1886 to the end of 1898 with the release of the K98 or the Gewehr 98, excuse me, not the K98.
yeah, yeah. But it's pretty neat, man. Like I have all those different guns all from the same year. That's a thing. I don't know. Like my collection has so many kind of like crossovers. Like I could fit like guns by like the year that they came out, like sort of together. Or I could fit whatever. But I do think I'd like to focus on 6.5. Right now, I have, of course, obviously the Swedes, the Carcano. I have a Dutch, a Mannlicher, but I know everyone's like, it's a Mannlicher. I have the Dutch rifle, the Dutch M95 that shoots it shoots a 6.5 by 53R.
Right,
A
the Dutch
weird,
Mannlicher round, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of a weird. Well, I guess a bunch of them did, not just not only the Dutch used it. I think the Romanians used it, I believe, and their
Well, they also had the Mannlichers.
yeah, they had basically the same rifles. I think the Romanians just had a different magazine, that rotary magazine.
I'm not sure, but this kind of lends us into the main topic for today, which is current Milsurp market, and then also tips for beginners. And this is something where both and I are actually are you and I are actually talking about already. And this is something that's a big tip I think for people first starting out. And this is something I noticed that neither one of us had when we first started, and that's to have a focus when you go into collecting. And for me, it didn't really focus until probably about 2 years ago, and that's probably after my fifth year of collecting. I just started buying everything. Any kind of Milsurp I could find, I bought. Whether or not I was interested in it or what, I just thought I would keep everything forever and I would just buy everything and it would just be awesome. But after a while, I don't know if you've noticed this, Danny, but for me, what happened to me is I had guns that would just sit in the safe that I never shot. I never did anything with. Nobody ever saw them. They just sat in the safe. That's to me useless. That's like having a convertible. You never take the top down. It's a pointless endeavor. So two big tips I have for beginners are have an idea of what you want to collect. Try to get an idea in your head. Say I want to go. You want to buy World War One era. You want to buy World War Two. You want to buy from a specific country. You want to buy of a specific caliber. Figure out what you want to do. You may not like whatever it is you want to start out with, and leads into my second thing. Don't be afraid to sell something. If you don't like it, there's no reason to hang on to it.
Yeah,
You can
that's a really great thing about guns is that it holds on to the value so well, like better than just about anything else that you can buy, really.
Yes, it really does. And the key thing I think for people, I've seen this argument before where a person was saying, I don't shoot this gun. Could I sell it? I don't like it. Could I sell it? And people will say, no, it's going to be worth more money someday. No, it's not worth anything if you're not selling it. You
Yeah.
have to sell it for it to be worth something. In my mind, the two biggest things somebody getting into Milsurp collecting need to understand are have an idea of what you want to collect, and don't be afraid. If you don't like something, sell it. Move on, get something else.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, man. Like I've been there a lot with guns. Like I used to say that I had a rotating collection because I only had like maybe like 5 Milsurps at the time that I could afford a gun. Like I had to sell something to buy it. So I'd pretty much just look at my collection and say, okay, like what gun haven't I touched for the last 6 months? Or what gun haven't I shot? Or what like what doesn't really do it for me anymore? And so I'll get rid of a gun, like something else that I'm a lot more interested in. And that's a good thing too. Like if you don't have a whole lot of money to dump into this collection, like buy one, buy two, or however many you can. And if you want something new, sell what you have, and buy the new thing.
The next thing I think we should talk about for a new collector, I think the Mosin Nagant M9130 has kind of been knocked off the pedestal of being the first gun everybody buys. I think the price point has moved too far up in the recent years to make it the entry level gun for Milsurps. What do you think,
Yeah.
Danny?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think part of it is the price that more people, I guess, are like aware of how shitty it is. It's just I think everyone was like thought it was just like a rough gun. You know what I mean? Like I still run into this. Like people think the like the roughness of the gun, you know what I mean? Like for it, but it's not like a very well been like designed further. And a lot of people think that's a feature, and that somehow lends itself to being more reliable and more tough. And it doesn't. Like it's not like an ultra reliable gun. It's a really rough action. It's a hard action to work. Like just about everything about like the 9130 sucks really.
Yeah,
Gun with
so I think the argument in the past was you could look past the roughness, the crudeness, because they were $100 or less guns. And
yeah,
that has no longer been the case for at least a year, basically, or so. Probably a little bit longer than that.
yeah. I
So,
remember I remember seeing a meme that was like, again, like how else are you going to arm five friends for $500 or something like that? Yeah.
right. And that's just no longer the case. I'm asking, what do you think is the entry level model that somebody should go looking for? I've got an idea myself, but I'm curious what you think.
Yeah. I had the sort of this conversation with somebody fairly recently. He was thinking about guns to get into. He didn't have a lot of money to buy on Milsurps, but he happened to say that he really likes Japanese stuff. Like he likes Japanese cars and he likes really well. And I said, well, that's great because Japanese, Arasakas are pretty cheap. Like when I go to the gun shows, like they seem to be really cheap. So I would say like for if someone was looking into getting into something on the cheap now, the new M9130s is probably Japanese Arasakas or Carcanas. One of the one of those two, I would say.
Now, I would agree with you as far as the cost of the rifles themselves. However, the cost of the ammunition, especially the 7.35 Carcanos, is going to be darn near impossible.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And the
yeah,
6.5 Japanese is also going to be difficult as well because that's also a weird cartridge dimension.
yeah, yeah. That's true. I didn't
The
even think of that.
7.7 is less so for the Japanese because that's a standard British 312, 311 diameter bullet. You can find ammunition for that somewhat readily available. The Carcanos, not so much. My argument for a good entry level Milsurp are going to be two choices, and one of them is kind of broad. But the first is going to be a Turkish Mauser. The Turkish
Oh,
Mausers get underrated a lot. They don't get praised as much as they should because they tended to be more used. They tend to be more heavily used, so they tend to be in rougher shape. But almost all the ones you'll find are an 8mm Mauser, and that's a very common cartridge. It's not hard to find that even in a like a Walmart store. You'll find some of those. Most of the smaller gun shops you'll be able to find 8mm Mauser. At the very least, they won't look at you like you've got three heads when you ask, "Do you have 7.65 by 53 Argentine?"
yeah,
That I think is probably my top pick for an entry level Milsurp. You've got the most of the ones you'll find are the 98 style action. You'll still find some of the conversion rifles, but I think that the most of them that are out there are the 8mm 98 action style. I think that is going to be my top pick. If I had to pick something else, I would argue for any of the South American Mausers. Most of these are going to be made pre World War One, and they're going to be of the highest quality. These are some of the most well built rifles of any time period because this was Mauser trying to sell his design to the world. So everything looks as best as it possibly can.
yeah, yeah. As long as it's a German made rifle, it's going to be real high quality. Yeah.
These are going to be less likely than the 8mm Mauser. Most of these are going to be in 7mm or they're going to be in 7.65. I think you can still find these reasonably cheap. The 1895 Chileans, the 1891 Argentines, the 1909 and 1908 Brazilians, 1908, 1909 Peruvians, not so much on those. 1909 Argentines, excuse me. And the 1908 Chilean, is it 1908?
1912. Chilean.
1912 Chileans. Mauser essentially armed the entirety of South and Central America. Almost every single one of these countries had Mauser rifles at some point, and they're almost all of them 7.65 by 53 or 7mm Mauser. Both of those rounds, the 7.65 less so, but both of those rounds are still pretty much available. TPU still makes 7.65, and a lot of companies still make 7mm Mauser. It was a very popular hunting cartridge, so I'm still arguing for the South American Mausers if you can find them.
Yeah, especially in 7mm Mauser. Like I've noticed, I think I was in a Cabela's or something, and they didn't have 8mm Mauser, but they had a bunch of 7mm Mauser.
Yeah, I've noticed it started to come back. A lot of the smaller calibers are starting to come back because of the recoil aspect, and it's also cheaper to make them.
Yeah, that's a good one. Now I have a counter gun now. Here's a good one I just thought of. Spanish 1916 carbine in 7.62 by 51.
A conversion rifle.
Yeah, yeah, one of the ones, not the. I mean, the seven, a 1916 and 7mm Mauser. That's pretty good too, as we were just talking about. Not terribly hard to find ammo for, but converted to 7.62 by 51. There you have a very common caliber, and you have a very cheap gun. Be a good one.
And I agree. I think that would be a good one. The only issue, obviously, is some people would say that the 7.62 is a little bit more powerful. It's obviously more powerful than 7mm Mauser, so you might have some issues, safety potentially. I've never heard anything myself, but the pressure difference is there.
Yeah, I hear a lot about that, but I haven't heard of anything actually like happening to the rifle. But
No, I think this will
that's
be
a
probably a topic for
safety
a
bonus.
future episode. I would definitely want to talk about myths of rifles, and
Yeah,
uh, we have some friends of ours in France that the organization in France that controls rifles that go for sale and the firearms that go for sale, they pressure test each rifle every sale. So if I was to sell a rifle to you in France, it'd have to go to a gunsmith and be pressure tested at 200% the maximum capacity of the cartridge. I can sell it to you and not pressure test it, but then it has to go to a gunsmith and be deactivated permanently.
oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that about French firearms.
Yes. Every sale it has to be pressure tested. That is the way they've come up with to ensure that nobody gets a non-functional dangerous firearm.
And so I bet that means there's none of those Italian 6.5 Vetterlis over there. They've all been blown up
Or deactivated.
or deactivated. No functioning ones, at least.
Yes. That I think would like to talk about in a future episode. Some of the topics I think we'd like to talk about in the future episode, and Danny kind of touched on this with bringing up his model that he suggested, and we talked about the Vetterli as well. Conversion rifles are a big part of the Milsurp world. There are, I don't know, 30 different ones that I can think of off the top of my head,
Yeah, there's a lot.
and there's a lot of confusion about them, especially the Vetterlis, for example, is a good one. Spanish conversion ones are actually another ones that gets confused a lot about what they are. The FR7, the FR8, the 1916s.
Yeah,
So
they finished a lot of stuff to theirs.
I think it would be a good topic to discuss the major conversion rifles, their pros and cons, whether or not you should buy one, whether or not you should go look for one. And I think that would be a good idea for a topic. Some other topics that we had discussed in the past. What were some other topics?
For the next one or for
Just in general, I was just saying for the future.
oh gosh, there were a lot. I can't remember any one specific now, but there we had a lot. We have a lot of ideas.
Yeah, it's going to be huge, right?
Yep, it's gonna be huge, huge. That's the best impression I can do.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to do that. So we have some other friends of ours that we're going to try to get on. Uh, Michael is a G98 collector. He probably one of the most knowledgeable people I know of for the Gewehr 98 specifically.
Yeah, he's like obsessed with the Gewehr 98.
Then we have Sam. who's obsessed with Turkish Mausers and bayonets.
Is he obsessed with Turkish Mausers? I didn't know that. I know he
Oh
loves
yes, he
band.
loves the Turkish Mausers.
Okay.
Then we have Andrew, who is actually not so much into guns as much, but he loves Arasakas, and he also is a big restorer of military vehicles. So this isn't going to be just about firearms. We'll do episodes where we talk about other types of military collecting. I know that Danny collects uh, militaria of all kinds.
Yeah. I've been getting more into uniforms and stuff like that lately.
Yeah, I forgot Sam is also big into uniforms and
Um,
medals as well.
big into U.S. stuff, and I'm mostly into foreign.
If we can get Will on, I'm not sure if we can, but he's always busy. He's big into French firearms. So I'm trying to get as many people on as we can of all different backgrounds and ideas so that we can have different ideas.
Yeah, definitely sounds good, man.
Yeah, I hope this works out. I hope we
Yeah,
do
did we
well.
miss one of the topics for this video?
What was the topic?
I can't remember.
Oh, we didn't really talk about the current Milsurp market.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I mean,
Um,
you've been out it more than I have.
yeah, so I pretty religiously try to go to gun shows whenever I can, and because I travel so much, I get to go to gun shows in a lot of different states, and I go to a lot of gun stores pretty much in every state that I go to. And I mean, the state of the Milsurp market, it's not best. Like at least in like along the East Coast, and to be like it seems to be kind of drying up. Like a lot of the stores I go to along the East Coast where it dried up now. Man, but for some reason I don't understand it. Washington State is pretty awesome. Like Washington State has a like I don't know. They just had a lot of milsurps and they were really good prices. They were kind of like this anomaly, but everywhere else, they're I guess they're drying up. There's I think people sort of get that they're cool and special. Yeah, it's getting hard into everything's the reason why it's such a good investment is because the prices are going up. If you're thinking about buying a milsurp, it's better to do it sooner than later.
I would agree. I think we'll see a spike in the market with the release of Battlefield 5. I know a lot of people poo-poo my belief that video games affect the market, but they do.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised like that if it didn't because I know the World War One centennial way drove World War One like interest in World War One and World War One firearms. And I just
Definitely.
know because of how I dabbled in them a little bit before the centennial, and then when I sort of started getting back into them now, I realized, oh man, I'm getting into it at the wrong time because they and yeah, pop culture does play a big part into firearms prices. I think World War II movie that comes out, I guarantee you there'll be a spike in the price of whatever guns are in the movie.
Yeah. Something that I've noticed on my side, I've spoken to about 3 or 4 different people I've seen personally, a trend that has been happening, and that's with these large collections. So you have somebody that's collected for, let's say conservatively 30, 40 years, and they end up with 200 to 300 guns. You have these huge collections that go on auction, and you'll see some of the more rare pieces especially go for insane prices, just astronomical prices, $3,000 to $4,000 or more, and people are fighting over them and that kind of thing. And then you look at the results for some of the lower end stuff, some of the stuff that's not necessarily as well fought over, and it's going for 100, $300. And I'm just like, what's going on? That same gun is for sale at this place for $700. Why are they going for $200 or $300? And I've seen this happen about 5 or 6 times in the past 10 months or so. And my theory behind this is that these huge collections are from people that were baby boomers. And they've had a lot of time and a lot of money to collect these firearms when they weren't very expensive. And now, as people are passing away, getting older, and needing to sell their firearms for whatever reason, the market for these rarer guns is specifically probably going to be other baby boomers that haven't passed and they have some disposable income and they're buying the rare guns. That's why the prices you don't see fall on the rare items. But the run of the mill M9130s or I've seen Arasakas Carcanos, as we talked about, don't go for very much. But I've seen some other stuff like South American Mausers that don't give a lot of attention at auctions. And I think what it is that the normal collector, you and I, Danny, don't have a whole lot of disposable income to throw around. And I think that that's something that's just happening in the past, I don't know, probably 2 years or so is something I've seen. And these huge collections, normally I would advise don't ever go to a gun only auction because everybody there is there to buy guns. You're going to have a lot of competition, but everything I've seen says that you should go to these because if you have $200 or $300, you could buy a gun. Sometimes you could buy multiple ones. And I think it's just a matter of the people wanting to buy these guns either don't know the auctions exist, or it's a case of there's so many things for sale. I saw an auction recently locally that was 387 lots, 387 different guns. They had guns that normally go for $500-$600 individually, but they were going for $200 because there were 40 of them in the listing. It's a case of just so much supply all of a sudden in a small area that you could come out like a bandit.
Mm. And yeah, you know what? I never really thought about the way you were kind of pointing it out, that people that have the most income to spend on guns have a lot of guns, so they have all the common stuff already. So if they're gonna buy something, they're gonna focus on the rare stuff.
Right.
Only
I won't see a reduction of more rare firearms. I think you're going to see the prices continue to rise. But
yeah,
I
but
foresee prices staying stagnant or going down for some of the more common items, specifically in these large lot auctions.
now I can tell you that there is such a thing as being too rare. It can be
Yes.
so rare that not a lot of people know about it, so there's not a lot of interest and there's not a lot of people wanting to get it.
Yeah, this is another tip we have for new people. If somebody says something is rare, that's not great. Everybody's
Yeah, not always.
everybody's definition of rare is different.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing. Is you kind of have to be like, well, what do you mean it's rare? Because it could be a good thing or a bad thing. Like if somebody's trying to talk you into buying something and they say, "Oh, this is rare, you should buy this." Well, if it's rare, why is it still for sale right now? Mm,
So here's a good example. The Siamese Mausers, which Danny will tell you that I love, and I do, go for about $300. There were only 50,000 of them made ever. That's pretty rare. But they go for $300 because they're in a dead caliber that nobody makes and nobody ever really knows about them. So this is an example of it's too rare to be worth anything.
yeah, that's a pretty good point. Yeah, the caliber probably has a lot to do with it too. If it was like if somebody loaded it, like, and you could buy a box of it with the rifle, a rifle that is unshootable pretty much in its current state. And you know what? I think guns that don't have any English on them, I think they tend to sell for a lot less.
Agreed. They also tend to be misidentified, which is pretty standard as well.
Yeah, which you can really make out on, like if you find a gun that's misidentified because there's no English on it. Ended with that one cuirassier or something that he had.
French rifle, yeah, I don't know. The French rifles I don't really know about.
Thing is that a lot of people, they don't, they can't read like the script that it's in, or they can't write it, they can't Google it, so they can't find out what it is. So
I still see examples though where it's in English or it has Latin letters that you could look up and they still don't know what it is. I will be
that's
honest
very
and say
funny.
that wherever you go, an auction, a store, whatever, bring your phone, bring something that can get online and look up. Google. Google's your friend.
Yeah. Yeah, get on Gunbroker and sign in so that you can look at sold auctions and then sort of see the price that whatever gun you're looking at is sold for. And that's a pretty good indication of value.
Yes. But like I've said to other people in the past, be aware that what gun broker is selling for might not be the case in your area.
Well, yeah, yeah. It's not like the perfect sort of estimator for every gun, because I've seen guns for sale for a lot less and a lot more than they should have. It's a pretty good rule of thumb. You know, you could plus or add 20% of whatever the listing sold for on there, I would say.
Right.
I was gonna mention my 35M when I found that at the shop. This could probably go along with like tips for people getting in, you know, looking for a Milsurp. So I stopped in this random gun store, and I was driving through Idaho, and I was in Boise. To this random gun store, I walked in. They had a whole bunch of Milsurps, which I thought was really cool. You know, they had a couple racks that were in the front of the store, and I looked through them, and they were all just kind of a lot of sporterized stuff and just a lot of kind of junk guns, I would say. And then I kind of walked up to the counter, and I noticed behind the counter, sort of in the back corner, Milsurps, and there's you know, this one that looked a lot different than the others, and I said, hey, you know, can I see that one, you know, third from the left? Or he got the gun, and he brought it to me, and the tag said something like 35M, like they didn't know what it was. So I think, you know, not just looking at the front, I think, you know, looking behind the counter or asking them, hey, is there any other guns? You got any, you know, is there any other Milsurps for sale in here that you don't have out here? All of that is really good advice for people for also building rapport with your local shops.
Yeah, I would agree.
You know, because they'll probably be more inclined with, you know, working with you on price a little bit more if they know you. And also if you know, are known as the person that's, you know, hey, I'm interested in this specific type of gun, call me if you get it in and I'll buy it. They know you well enough, then they'll probably call you if they get anything in.
Right. Well, who wouldn't pass up a almost guaranteed sale?
Yeah, yeah, it's a win-win, really.
I agree. I usually make the rounds on the local shops. Most of the stuff around here isn't going to be Milsurp oriented. I live in Illinois, and it's just not a thing in Illinois. Most of the local shops don't really have any Milsurps. Occasionally, you'll have a guy that's traded it in on something else, and you'll run across something that's not too bad, or it's going to be insanely overpriced. Most of the stuff that I run across just really isn't worth it. But it still doesn't hurt to walk around and see. I had a friend that went into a pawn shop and found a PSL for $600.
Oh,
That's, in case anybody doesn't know, those sell north of the $1,500 mark now.
oh man. Yeah.
He he could easily double his money today, and he loves the gun, so you know it is what it is.
Uh, yeah, that's like this one guy, he has a G M.
Kind of cut out there. What?
He has a G41M, which is, so that's the Mauser variant of the G41. A lot of people don't know there's two German G41s. Crazy rare, and they're real funky. They have a bolt like handle, so
Oh yes,
they're
yes.
like so they can be fired bolt action or semi-automatic, and it's just this crazy like and shoots. But I saw the guy post pictures of his gun online, and so I sent him a message, and I was just, you know, talking to him about his gun, and he said, yeah, he walked into a random pawn shop, and he said the price was just like a steal, like a once in a lifetime thing. So he bought he didn't tell me exactly what he paid for it, but I mean he bought this, you know, super rare gun that is, you know, 5 grand. It's probably a lot more than that, and he bought it for probably next to nothing, you know, just because he's in the right place at the right time. And that's part of it too, man. You like not you need to go to your gun store like once a week. Like you need to go to all the pawn shops like as often as you can, and check out those places because they have revolving stock, you know.
Yeah, and then this is also a little bit more morbid, but like I mentioned before with the large collections, people are passing away before selling their stuff, and the people that don't know anything about guns, they're selling it to the stores for next to nothing because they don't know what they are, and the people that are buying them don't know what they are either.
Yeah, yeah. That I got a couple guns recently from Michael that way. He hooked me up with he went into a gun shop. They had this huge influx of Milsurps. He started sending me pictures of the stuff that was in there, and it was the same thing. Somebody died, had this huge collection. The family didn't know what the guns were. And so they just dumped all of these guns on this local gun store. And we're just like, here, sell them, get what you can for them, sell them. Or either was overwhelmed or they didn't care, or whatever. And I mean, they were selling them for like, I mean, it was crazy. Like what they're like a 25% of probably what the gun should be selling for is what they were selling them for. Yeah, right place at the right time, man. You have to frequent those places and build rapport with your local shops.
Agreed.
It's work, man. You know, a lot of people don't want to. They don't want to, actually go out there and look for deals. They just want to. A lot of people just want to complain about like, oh, the prices at the gun show is so crazy.
Well, they can be, but at the same time, I've seen, even in our local gun show, which is awful usually, I might be finding one or two Milsurps the entire show. But even then, I've found deals. Like I found a Turkish short rifle that was $300, which is probably worth that or worth $400 to $500, depending on who needs it. You know, if somebody needs it to complete their collection. And I think there was a Swedish Mauser there the last time, and you tried to get me to buy that one.
It's a couple different things though. It's knowing the market, knowing the prices, and knowing the guns. You know what I mean? Like you have to know the gun and know what they go for to know that it's a good deal. They're complaining about, there being no good deals out there. Don't go. Or late after all the good stuff has been sold, man.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah,
If you're going to a show, I would suggest going first day. Or if
yeah,
not the first day, if it's just like a 3-day show, it starts on a Friday and goes through Sunday, go Saturday. Because people will be bringing stuff and walking it around.
yeah. Go as early as you can. Like try to get there as close to opening, like on the day it opens. I have one gun that I own now just because I went to this gun show on the first day as soon as it opened, man. It's a long story. I could tell you about it, but
Well, we're
it's
running out
a
of time.
yeah, but
We've been
you got to be there early, as
yeah,
early as you can.
that's a key thing. I agree. The key point of this podcast that I'd like to say is that we don't really have in the Milsurp community a podcast for just guns. There's some gun podcasts that are out there that I've listened to, but for the most part, they really talk about politics and they talk about the modern hunting, modern shooting world, and that's just not something that I really care about. I wanted to start a podcast for the people that collect military surplus, and they wanted to hear just random topics. And I hope that it's going to be informative, going to be useful to people. We're going to try to make it fun as possible too. Some of the ideas that I have are underrated models that nobody talks about. Hint: Siamese Mausers, and the the most overrated firearms, the most underrated firearms, the best cartridge. We've had that argument before, haven't we, Danny? The best military cartridge
Yes,
ever created.
yes. Oh man, that's just that's an argument right there.
That could easily spend an hour arguing about that. The key thing I think I want to be this to be is informative and fun, and I hope it's been interesting and fun as well today. Today is going to be a bit less structured because we just kind of gone free form with it. In the future, it's going to be a little bit more structured. It'll be a little bit less hard to follow, I guess. Danny, do you have anything else to say?
No, no. I hope whoever's listening enjoyed this.
Do you have anything to plug?
Yeah. I don't know my channel. If you're listening to this on my channel, thanks for coming. If you're not listening to this on my YouTube channel, Gun Guy on YouTube, and check out. I do a lot of Milsurp.
It cut off there. It's North Florida Gun Guy, right?
And North Florida Gun Guy on YouTube. I do a lot of military surplus. So if you like old guns, stuff like that, it'll be a good channel for you.
And you guys can go on there and tell Danny he's wrong and he doesn't know what a clip is.
I know. I get that so often.
All right, so we'll see you guys soon, and hopefully we'll do a lot of these. It's just going to be kind of sporadic for a little while because all of us have different jobs and different schedules. Thank you all for coming and listening.